Vladimir Putin, a name that echoes across the world, a figure shrouded in mystery and controversy. To some, he is a hero, a savior of Russia. To others, he is a villain, a tyrant who threatens the world order, a former KGB agent who now commands a nuclear superpower. His story is one of ambition, power, and the relentless pursuit of a vision. To understand him, we must delve into the tumultuous history of his nation. For over 2 decades, Putin has held the reins of power in Russia. He has weathered economic storms, crushed his opponents, and projected Russian influence across the globe. His rule has been marked by both stability and repression, by economic growth and military adventurism. But what is his endgame? Where will his ambitions lead Russia? This is the story of Vladimir Putin, the man who challenged the 21st century. Join us as we unravel the enigma of Putin and explore the profound implications of his rule for Russia and the world. To understand Vladimir Putin, one must first understand the city that forged him, Leningrad. Now known as St. Petersburg, it is a city of imperial grandeur and tragic history. In the aftermath of World War II, Leningrad bore the deep scars of conflict. The Nazi siege, lasting almost 900 days, had left the city devastated. It was in this crucible of hardship, amidst the ruins of a once great city, that Vladimir Putin was born in 1952. Putin's childhood was far removed from the opulent palaces of Russia's Tsarist past. He was raised in a communal apartment, a cramped and crowded living space shared by multiple families. His parents, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin and Maria Ivanovna Shelomova, were working-class people who had endured the horrors of war. Life was a daily struggle marked by shortages, hardship, and the ever-present shadow of the war. Even as a young boy, Putin displayed a quiet intensity and a thirst for adventure. He devoured books about war heroes and explorers, immersing himself in tales of courage and daring. It was during these formative years that Putin developed a fascination with the world of espionage. The KGB, the Soviet Union's feared and respected intelligence agency, held a particular allure. Putin's interest in the KGB was not merely a childhood fantasy. He was determined to join their ranks, to dedicate his life to serving his country in the clandestine world of intelligence. While still a teenager, Putin approached a KGB office eager to enlist. He was told to finish his education and return when he was older. Upon graduating from university, he was recruited by the KGB, his childhood dream becoming a reality. The year is 1985. In the divided city of Berlin, a concrete barrier stands as a stark symbol of ideological division. This is where Vladimir Putin, a young KGB officer, finds himself stationed. Not on the front lines of a battlefield, but in the shadows, navigating the murky world of espionage. He moves through the world of informants and double agents, carefully cultivating his network, always listening, always watching. Dresden, East Germany, becomes his stage. Putin's work is a far cry from the glamorous exploits of Cold War spy thrillers. His days are spent poring over reports, meeting with contacts in dimly lit cafes, and orchestrating the subtle manipulations that are the hallmark of KGB operations. He learns the art of the invisible hand, shaping events from the shadows, influencing perceptions and undermining his enemies. The winds of change are blowing across Eastern Europe, carrying with them whispers of freedom and the yearning for self-determination. Protests erupt across the Eastern Bloc. The Soviet grip on its satellite states weakens. In Berlin, the unthinkable happens. The wall, that enduring symbol of division, crumbles. Putin watches as history unfolds, a silent observer to the collapse of an empire. The Soviet Union, the nation he swore to serve, is dissolving before his eyes. Putin returns to Russia, a country teetering on the precipice of uncertainty. He carries with him the lessons learned in the shadows, a deep distrust of the West, and a burning ambition to restore Russia to its former glory. The collapse of the Soviet Union may have been a defeat, but for Vladimir Putin it is a call to action. The Soviet Union, once a formidable superpower, lay shattered. The 1990s were a time of immense upheaval for Russia. The centrally planned economy crumbled, giving rise to rampant inflation and widespread poverty. Oligarchs, a new breed of ruthless businessmen, amassed vast fortunes through dubious means, exploiting the chaos and manipulating the levers of power. Amidst this turmoil, Boris Yeltsin emerged as the first president of the newly independent Russian Federation. Yeltsin, a former Communist Party official, embraced democratic reforms and a market economy. But his presidency was plagued by economic woes and political instability. Yeltsin needed a steady hand. He found that man in Vladimir Putin. On New Year's Eve 1999, Yeltsin announced his resignation, handing power to Putin, his chosen successor. Russia had a new president, one whose rise to power had been swift and unexpected. Putin, the former KGB officer, now commanded the nuclear arsenal of a nation yearning for stability. From the outset, Putin projected quiet strength, a stark contrast to Yeltsin. He spoke of restoring order, reviving Russia's economy, and reclaiming its place on the world stage. The independent media, a thorn in the side of the Kremlin, was muzzled. Putin's message was clear: there was a new sheriff in town. The Russian people, weary of chaos, largely acquiesced to Putin's rule. They had tasted freedom in the turbulent 1990s. Putin had emerged from the shadows of the KGB to become the undisputed master of the Kremlin. To secure his grip on power, Putin needed a trial by fire to demonstrate his strength and resolve. He found it in Chechnya, a predominantly Muslim republic in the North Caucasus. In 1999, apartment bombings in Moscow, blamed on Chechen separatists, provided the pretext. Putin launched a full-scale military offensive, vowing to crush the rebellion and restore order. "We will pursue the terrorists everywhere," Putin declared. The Second Chechen War, as it became known, was a brutal and bloody affair. Russian forces, armed with superior firepower, unleashed a relentless bombardment on Grozny and other Chechen cities, reducing them to rubble. Chechen fighters, outgunned but determined, waged a fierce guerrilla war, inflicting heavy casualties on the Russian military. Putin framed the conflict as a fight against terrorism, a struggle for Russia's very survival. The Russian public, bombarded with images of Chechen brutality and weary of instability, largely rallied behind Putin. With the Chechen War raging, Putin moved swiftly to consolidate his grip on the media, recognizing its immense power to shape public opinion. Independent television stations, which had dared to criticize the Kremlin's handling of the Chechen conflict, were silenced or brought under state control. Journalists who refused to toe the line were harassed, intimidated, or simply disappeared. The free press, a cornerstone of any democracy, withered under Putin's rule, replaced by a tightly controlled media landscape that served as an echo chamber for the Kremlin's propaganda. Putin turned his attention to the oligarchs, powerful businessmen who amassed fortunes during the chaotic privatization of the 1990s. These oligarchs, accustomed to impunity, posed a direct challenge to Putin's authority. Putin offered them a choice: loyalty or oblivion. Those who resisted, like Mikhail Khodorkovsky, were jailed on charges, their downfall a warning to any oligarch who dared to cross Putin. With each passing year, Putin's grip on Russia tightened. He silenced dissent, crushed enemies, and rebuilt the economy, thanks to soaring oil and gas prices. He presented himself as the savior who restored Russia's place on the world stage. Putin cultivated a public persona, a man of action, a patriot, a defender of traditional values. State media showed Putin shirtless on horseback, fishing in Siberia, practicing judo, attending religious services. Putin understood the power of symbolism, appealing to Russia's deep-seated pride and historical grievance. He exploited patriotic sentiment, portraying Russia as a besieged fortress. The West, with its NATO expansion, became a convenient scapegoat. Putin's Russia began to flex its muscles, asserting its interests boldly. Section 3. The Shadow of Empire. The 2008 Georgia War was a watershed moment, signaling Putin's willingness to use military force. It exposed the West's impotence in the face of Russian aggression. Emboldened by his success, Putin turned his attention to Ukraine, a country of vital strategic importance. Ukraine, with its fertile farmlands and access to the Black Sea, was the breadbasket of the Soviet Union. Section 4. Seeds of Conflict. In 2014, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian leader, was ousted in a popular uprising. Putin saw an opportunity to reassert Russia's control. Russian forces swiftly annexed Crimea, a strategically important territory. Putin justified the annexation as protecting ethnic Russians. This narrative was amplified by Russian state-controlled media. Russia began supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine, fueling a bloody conflict that displaced millions. The West responded with sanctions and condemnation, but these measures proved ineffective in deterring Putin's ambitions. The seeds of a larger conflict had been sown. The world watched with bated breath as tensions escalated along the Ukrainian border. Satellite images revealed a massive buildup of Russian troops, tanks, and artillery. Diplomatic efforts intensified, but a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. Putin railed against NATO expansion, accused Ukraine of genocide in the Donbas region, and questioned Ukraine's right to exist as an independent nation. Western leaders scrambled to find a diplomatic solution. Sanctions were threatened, military aid was promised to Ukraine, but Putin seemed undeterred. In the early hours of February 24, 2022, Putin announced a special military operation in Ukraine. The world watched in shock as Russian forces invaded Ukraine. Explosions rocked cities as missiles targeted military installations and government buildings. Tanks and armored vehicles poured across the border, aiming for Kiev. The West responded with remarkable unity and resolve. The United States, the European Union and their allies imposed crippling sanctions on Russia, targeting its banks, its oligarchs, and its access to the global financial system. Military aid, including anti-tank weapons, surface-to-air missiles, and intelligence, flowed into Ukraine, bolstering its defenses against the Russian onslaught. Perhaps most unexpectedly, the invasion galvanized global public opinion against Russia. Protests erupted in cities around the world, condemning the aggression and demanding an end to the bloodshed. Social media platforms, once seen as tools of Russian disinformation, became channels for amplifying Ukrainian voices and exposing Russian atrocities. The invasion of Ukraine marked a turning point in Putin's rule, shattering the carefully crafted image he had cultivated over 2 decades. The mask of the strong, silent leader slipped, revealing the cold, calculating heart of an autocrat willing to sacrifice the lives of thousands to achieve his imperial ambitions. The world had seen Putin's true face, and it was not a pretty sight. As the war in Ukraine grinds on, its endgame remains shrouded in uncertainty. Will Putin, facing fierce resistance and international pressure, settle for a costly victory? Or will he escalate the conflict, risking a wider war with the West? The world holds its breath as the fate of Ukraine and Europe hangs in the balance. What will be Putin's legacy on Russia and the world? Will he be remembered as the man who restored Russia to its former glory, a modern-day Tsar who defied the West? Or will his name be forever linked to the bloodshed in Ukraine, a stark reminder of unchecked ambition? The world watches, still grappling with the enigma of Vladimir Putin. Is he a shrewd strategist, playing a high-stakes game of chess on the global stage, or a reckless gambler willing to risk everything on a throw of the dice? Is he driven by a genuine desire to protect Russia's interests? Or is he consumed by a dangerous nostalgia for a lost empire? A yearning to rewrite history and right perceived wrongs? The answers to these questions remain elusive, hidden behind the Kremlin's walls and the enigmatic facade of the man who rules Russia. One thing is sure, the story of Vladimir Putin, the man who challenged the 21st century, is far from over. His decisions in the days and years to come will have profound consequences for Russia, for Europe, and for the world. The world holds its breath, watching and waiting as the next chapter of this unfolding drama unfolds.